All right, what is up? What is up? You already know the freaking deal. We're back out here in the garage today. I am working on this transmission crossmember. I've got a 1.5 inch piece of tubing cut out in between the frame rails. I'm going to weld some tabs on the frame. I want to make this removable, so I'm going to make it bolt in. I'm not just going to, weld a crossbar straight to the frame. So I have these tabs that I'm going to weld to the frame and then make a bolt go through there that we'll go through this cross member. I'm going to cut a hole in the cross member, obviously cut this down a little bit, but then stick that through there and weld this to the tubing. And that way the bolt can slide through there and bolt to the tabs. This little piece right here, I had to cut down a little bit. The only size that Tractor Supply had was 3/4 and 1/2 inch, and I'm using 1/2 inch bolts. So obviously the 1/2 inch tubing would have been too small, and 3/4 too big. So I cut a little bit out of that tubing and squeezed it in the vise and welded it back together to where it's a little tighter and snug around the bolt. Much more desirable. And then I have this piece right here that I'm going to weld on the back side of that tubing. That was just a piece that I actually cut off the frame table. Any C-channel would probably work, or you could probably even use more of those tabs and put a flat plate across it. But I remember that I had that piece and it seemed like it would work pretty well. So I just drilled 3 1/2 inch holes in there and then cut the centers out with the jigsaw, and then took the dremeled it out. But yeah, I'm going to get some holes cut in the big tubing, get the little tubing slid in there, and weld that deal up. All right, so I got these welded on there. I probably should have found some smaller tubing with a thicker wall, but this will do. These are not the prettiest welds by any means, but it'll hold. It's really just like a path for the bolt. I didn't want to bolt the cross member just to, round tubing. I wanted something flat. It's not the prettiest, but it'll do. Yeah, before I weld the tabs on the frame, I think I'm going to weld this piece onto the center of it. I know this tubing is 1.5 inches, so I have a 1.5 inch hole saw. Just put it on here, and I will draw a circle around it and then cut that out and grind it flush. That way it'll snug around this tube nicely. But yeah, I'll get this drawn on here and get this deal notched out. All right, so on this stock cross member, I remembered that it was slanted a little bit, like it's not completely flat, which I'm not sure why it's like that, but it worked with this cross member, so I'm just gonna duplicate that. So I set this deal over here, zeroed it out on the table, set it up here, 6.05 degrees down on the outside. So I will copy that to the new cross member, which I've done right here, 6.10, close enough. I went ahead and just used a hole saw on that deal. I was just gonna cut it and grind it with the flappy disc, but I decided to battle with the hole saw. I always hate using them things. I need to get like a good hole saw kit, because the ones that I have, like the guide drill bit, the center bit always falls out, and the like one of them's a flathead and you can't ever get it tight, and the other one's an Allen key that's all stripped out, and yeah, it's a nightmare. I was able to battle through it and get those notched out so that centerpiece fits nicely on there. I'm just gonna tack it on there right now, get it fabbed up in the frame, and then go from there. I'm probably gonna put the engine and transmission up in there too, just to double check and clarify that everything's level and sitting right up in there before I weld everything solid. I learned that it's always best to double check, triple check, get this tacked up, and move on to the tabs for the frame. All right, so I got the centerpiece tacked in, and I've got the tabs bolted to the crossbar. tight enough to where they can't really pivot freely. But if I really put some effort into it, I can pivot them down just to keep it all level. I am gonna have to get some longer bolts. I thought 3 inches would be plenty, but apparently they're not because they're not sticking through the nylon on the nut. I wanna try to get the all thread in the middle. Obviously get it up to the bottom of that tape where the mark is for the height on the plate. But I'm gonna have to do it one side at a time like I did in the front, to where I just hold one side up to where it's level with the height mark, tack it, come over to the other side, adjust accordingly, and yeah, just go from there. It might be a little bit of a struggle, but I will persist through it and get her tacked on there and get it leveled out. All right, so I got the tabs welded on to the frame. Some of these welds are not pretty. It's hard to get the gun down in there on the inside to weld those, but I got a good bead across the top on both sides. I think I'm going to put a plate across the top as well, just to kind of stiffen them up, and then the cross member will come in from the bottom. But in order to do that, I will have to cut a little extra off the ends of these, because if I try to take it out the bottom of the tabs right now, it hits this little lip right here on the frame, and it won't let the cross member drop down. So I will get that cut down, get a plate across the top, and I'm probably going to cut the center plate back off. Not really a fan of how it's positioned on that all thread. It's pretty hard off to one side. Center it on the all thread and get that welded in solid, and then I will put the transmission up in there. I'm probably gonna set a block up in there too, just to get the angle and the position accurate. That way I know I'm getting a good reading on angles and stuff, and then I'll leave that in there. That way I can put the drive shaft on the transmission. I'll be able to put the carrier bearing up onto its mounting surface when I go to put that cross member in. Just trying to cross all my T's and dot on my I's so I don't run into a problem down the road. But yeah, man, moving right along. This is a little more time consuming than I was expecting, but it'll be worth it in the long run. All right, been out here just grinding, son. Anyways, I got the plates welded in for the top of the tabs. Much better welds than down the side. It'll just give me some reassurance that it has some extra rigidity. I got the center mounting plate all welded in solid as well, flush with the height mark. I saved these little cutouts from the hole saw from where I notched the mounting plate out. Just these little deals. And I'm going to take that bar back out and weld the ends of it. That way it's not just open and nothing can get in there and rust it from the inside. So yeah, I'll get those welded on real quick and then attempt to get the transmission up in here. But it's gonna be fun with this frame table because that bar down there at the bottom does not let me slide the cherry picker in there from the front, which was the ideal way to set the block in there. So I'm gonna have to go from the side, which shouldn't be a big deal, but I don't know, I've never done it that way, so only time will tell. I'm going to get this engine slapped up in there so I can have something to attach the transmission to. Get this deal picked up, get some motor mounts bolted onto it. But LS lift plates for sale. Custom made these. I have a couple that are powder coated. Some of them are silver, some of them are black. I have Gen 3 and Gen 4, so if you're interested in one, get a hold of me on Facebook, JMS Auto. Just shoot me a message. $50 shipped to your door. All right, I got the block up in there. I used the jack on the back side to hold it up a little bit because it was sagging without the transmission on there. Would have made it difficult to get the trans on the dowels. Now to get this transmission up in there, which will definitely be a fun task. Never lifted this with the cherry picker before. Usually I just put it in from the bottom on the jack. I can't do that now. It sits up on the frame table, obviously. I'm hoping that I drained that. I think I did, so hopefully it's not leaking trans fluid everywhere, but I might pick it up and take the drain plug out of it just to double check. Yeah, watch me struggle. All right, so as you probably saw in the first part of that time lapse there, my memory was not correct and I did not drain the transmission. So when I tried to move it, it puked trans fluid out everywhere. But yeah, man, I got it up in the frame. I was able to make a little mechanism to lift it up and get the pan drained so it wasn't leaking everywhere when I put it over the frame table. But yeah, a little patience and perseverance. I got it up in there and that cross member seems like it's gonna work. That little slot that's in the mounting plate, I was a little worried that the mounting stud on the transmission wasn't going to be in the center of that slot, but it was. It's not maxed out front or backwards. It still has a little bit of adjustment, which I don't know why it would need to be adjusted anymore, but just in case, it's there. So yeah, man, that turned out great. I'm super happy with it. Next up, I'll be putting the drive shaft in it and getting the cross member welded up in there for the carrier bearing. Being that this truck is an extended cab, it does have a two-piece drive shaft with a carrier bearing. Super happy with it, man. But as always, thanks for watching. Give this video a like, give me a comment down below, and subscribe to the channel so I can continue to grow this thing. And Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa, whatever y'all celebrate, happy that. See you in the next one.